So I'm going to start trying to answer some of the questions that you guys have left. Thanks to everybody that left a question. I can't guarantee that I'm going to get to everything in this video because I'm basically waiting on my baby to wake up, and whenever she wakes up, the video's got to be over. I don't want to really cut any of the responses short, so we'll just go as far as we get, and if I have to make a second or third video, we'll go ahead and do that. So thanks to everybody that left a question, especially Garrett T, who suggested this. I'll start with his questions that he left in the post where he asked me to make one of these videos. Let's see. His first question is, what do you do for a living? I'm going to pass on that. I like to keep social media, work, family kind of separate. I'm doing this because I have a passion for the old time weightlifting, and I want to share that. That doesn't necessarily, the other details of my personal life don't necessarily need to go to everybody. That's not really why I'm on social media. Sorry. When did you start lifting? Okay, I started lifting at 18. I'm 32 now. Before that, I'd been doing bodyweight stuff in judo. I competed in judo for 4 years. I was, quite frankly, getting thrown around a lot by much stronger guys because I'm 6 feet tall, and I was competing in the 178 division, so you can imagine that had me being pretty skinny. I was fit, I could do a whole lot of push-ups, but I was getting my ass handed to me by guys that were 5'5" and also 178, and I was kind of a skinny beanpole at that time. Fit, but not particularly strong. I ended up picking up weightlifting at 18, like I said, some with a good basis of bodyweight training, but the first time I went in the gym, I bench pressed, because obviously that's what any beginner knows to do. Everyone knows bench press. I got trapped under 155 pounds at a body weight of, like I say, 170, 180, so less than my body weight, and had to be rescued by a soccer player of all people, which kind of sucked. But I stuck with it, and eventually, obviously got that up a ways. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know anything at all when I first started, but I just picked everything up by watching people, reading, and eventually I figured out, the basics. I didn't even start squatting and deadlifting until probably my second or third year of lifting. Had a little back injury, well, not actually a pretty serious one, right at the start. But I believe that was a question that I was also asked later, so I'm going to go into the details on that later. But yeah, basically I made some really good progress in my first 4 or 5 years. Had a kind of hit the wall, had a very long period of stagnation. I didn't really start to make serious progress again until this year. I mean, I made little incidental PRs here and there, but nothing was really that great until this year when I really changed up my training methods. Okay, and do you have any other hobbies beside weightlifting? I mean, it's hard to fit everything in with a kid. Most of what I do is like hiking, and I like nature photography. I don't have like all the fancy stuff yet, although I did just get a where is it? I got a telescopic lens for my just for my phone that I can hopefully take good pictures with. There's a local wetlands where a lot of cool birds are. I'm trying to get some good pictures of white pelicans, coyotes, harriers, stuff of that nature now. I'm not that great with it yet, but we're working on it. I have a surfboard. I'm going to try to, learn to surf this year as time with the family permits. But yeah, I mostly just like to be outdoors and stuff like that. Those are my primary hobbies outside of weightlifting. Okay, thanks Garrett T for that question. Let me move on to the next video where I actually asked for the questions and got feedback. I'm going to try to get these, well, whatever. I'm just going to go down the way, get them in whatever order they're listed here. I don't know if that's the order they came in or what, whatever. So, how long do we have to wait for a Boogs collab? That one's from Supa Bambi. I think someone else asked that about, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I'll collab with Boogs. I'll collab with Juji or anybody else, if they want to. But obviously, I don't think that's how this thing works. Like, I have, 2 grand followers. Thanks to all of you. I really appreciate you. But I don't think these guys that have like hundreds of thousands of followers are going to be much interested in a collab with somebody that is relative unknown. But hey, if they want to, I'll collab with Boogs, Juchi, whoever. Not Tom. He seems like a weirdo. I don't. Yeah, it sounds like he's a little bit of a psycho, so I wouldn't want to really have any connection with him. But yeah, I mean, I'm up for it. I just I don't think that there's any benefit for these guys in doing that with someone who hasn't really gotten that level of notoriety yet. Okay. So thanks to Super Bambi for that comment. So Wayfarer asked, I'd like to hear a more comprehensive breakdown about your training history. I appreciate your reply, but I think it would be useful for people to hear your story as an accomplished natural lifter who now specializes in more fun lifts. Let me just combine that with a couple of other comments and just go into detail on this. Making Gains asked, I'd like to ask about any training mistakes you might have made that hampered your progress and how you overcame those setbacks. And then another one that we're going to roll into that is Mr. Philly CZ. Have you had any injuries? If so, how did you deal with them? These are all really good questions, and to me it makes the most sense to just roll them in together. So as I alluded to earlier, I started training when I was 18. Very early on, I got a pretty good low back injury. Basically, when I got into this, I just knew the folk wisdom that you have to protect your back. Lift with your legs, not with your back. You always have to protect your back. Don't ever strain your back. But I also knew from judo that your power comes from your legs, much more so than your upper body, and it's very important to get strong legs. I'd been doing a bunch of lunges. That was my primary leg exercise, like, either unweighted or with, very light weights, lunges. So when I started actually lifting weights, I tended toward exercises that would allow me to train my legs without straining my back. There were a couple of machines that I used. But yeah, basically I got an injury on a leg press. It wasn't even a plate-loaded leg press. It was one of those with a little stack. Silly. I think honestly, I think I just had never really trained my low back in any way because I'd always, been told, don't hit your low back. And I think just with all the leg training I'd been doing, I just frankly gotten to a point where my legs were much, much stronger than my low back area. And yeah, I got that little pop, and I thought it was done. I mean, most people think that they're done when they get a back injury. I talk to people every day. Oh yeah, well I used to I used to lift like you, but then I took an arrow in the back. And that was my mentality at first. It was about a year where I just really babied it, just only did leg exercises that let me completely avoid touching my low back, and even then I had constant pain. It gave me difficulty in doing various things. It sucked. Eventually I just got so frustrated with it, it's like, I'm already injured. What's the worst that happens? I continue to be injured, whatever. I got really frustrated and said, you know what, I'm going to deadlift, I'm going to squat. What's the worst that can happen? I'm already crippled. And like deadlifting actually felt surprisingly good because I'd never actually done it before. I didn't even know it was a thing when I first started. But since then I'd read about it, and I actually started deadlifting, and that actually felt pretty good. I probably didn't even start deadlifting until at least my second year of lifting. I still had some back issues, didn't feel good. As I deadlifted, it continued to feel a little bit better, then get strained again, a little bit better. Was probably working up to maybe a max of 315 at that time, but there were constant issues. So the program that I started just kind of on intuition that ultimately fixed everything was just to do super light squats and deadlifts for high reps. Just really focusing on just getting good, pump into everything. I was using basically 135 on everything, but just focusing on getting good depth and pump and everything. Never trying to push the weight. And then after a while, I found that things felt good, and that was probably late second year of lifting, maybe pushing into third year. I started actually trying to push the weights on squat and deadlift, and my back was basically great. So once I started really pushing the weight, my deadlift came really quickly. I was lifting 405 before I knew it, and by my 4th year of lifting, I pulled 600 pounds, you know, just a belt and chalk. Um, like, I mean, yeah, deadlift gains came really quickly, but again, that was because I hadn't really deadlifted at all, so I wasn't starting from square zero. I had done a lot more leg training than, and I had, you know, I had a good background just from pull-ups and stuff, so I, you know, based on, you know, squats and lunges and pull-ups and stuff, I already had some back development, so I really quickly got to mid fours, and then from there it was just pure progressive overload. Just every week I would just try to put 5-10 pounds on the bar. Sometimes I'd fail, mostly I wouldn't, and just working up max singles and a couple back offs, and that got me to 600 pounds by my 4th year of lifting. At the same time, I think I was benching mid threes. I put a lot more work and effort into bench than deadlift, because I mean that's something I'd been doing from square one and trying really hard to advance at. Just on bench, I know I stalled around my, yeah, I got up to, you know, 225, with not that much difficulty, but kind of stalled mid twos for a long time. You know, really worked some powerlifting trying to get it up, but it didn't really want to budge. What really worked for me actually was switching to decline. That let me just, you know, build a lot of that basic strength and grinding strength. And, you know, once I got my decline up to like 340 or something, I figured, okay, I bet I can flat bench 300, 315, and as you know, getting back into the bench for a little bit, practicing, that happened. So yeah, by around year 4 to 5, I think my best lifts were like 385 on bench, 600 deadlift, got to 500 on squat, and then with a big bulk, I got up to a strict, like, heels together military press, clean and press with 235, which was pretty cool. Never done anything like that since, because I was doing like GOMAD, just eating like a lunatic. Got really fat in the process. That was stupid, but it was kind of cool. It was like you know, it makes you really strong at pressing in the short term, but then wrecks your joints in the long term. So I don't really do anything like that anymore. Let's see. Around this time, as I was getting kind of more advanced, I found out more about old time training through Chaos and Pain. I don't know if anyone is old enough to remember him. He mostly just puts out like cat pictures now. But well, I barely got started. I think the baby's awake. Yeah, so my last attempt at filming this was cut short by the baby waking up. I think I'm just going to splice this in. We'll go from where we left off. Got kind of sick full moon night. Doesn't really come through in the video, but it's pretty cool. Yeah, anyway. So yeah, during, I guess, my 4th, 5th year of lifting, around that time, I started to get a little bit of an introduction to some of the old-time methods and lifts through the blogger Chaos and Pain. Unfortunately, the guys seem to be more interested in like using some of the old-time strongman's routines to just justify training frequently and not going to failure than actually doing the old lifts. But he wrote about them, so I got exposure to one-hand deadlift, searcher squats, behind the neck jerks, one-hand snatches through that, and I started trying those. I did, around that time, at no particular order, at some point I did a 155 one-hand snatch, power snatch, I think 455 one-hand deadlift. That's one of the old videos really early on this channel. Started doing Xerxes really heavy. I got up to a little over 500 for a couple reps. I'm not aware of anybody who was putting out really heavy 2-depth Xerxes squats on YouTube at that time, so good for me. But it was all kind of piecemeal. These were really, I recognized the value of these few lifts that I had, but it was very piecemeal. It was just kind of fun things to do on the side when the regular lifts weren't working, and I hadn't fully gotten into the mentality of just adding a lot of training variety. I was still very, very focused on the squat, bench, and deadlift because those are the big three. So yeah, after that time, I had a very long period of stagnation. I would hit like incidental little PRs here and there, for the next, I guess, from like 2000, oh God, I'm not going to get it. Whatever. It was a long time. Basically until this year, I was mostly stagnant, a couple very mild or moderate PRs here and there, but not a whole lot until the COVID lockdown. And when the COVID lockdown happened, obviously I couldn't go to the gym anymore. Basically all I had was a barbell and up to 185 pounds. So I knew based on that, obviously I'm going to have to change things up. But I already had some exposure to the old time strongmen. I knew they weren't training with a whole gym. They were mostly just using basic equipment and getting hella jacked. So I didn't really know everything I needed, but I knew where to look. And I started looking around, looking into the old methods. I found Strongman Archaeology, James Fuller's Instagram page. That place is a gold mine if anybody's interested. Any exercise you can think of that's ever been done in history practically, you'll find demonstrated there. It was through him that I found Arthur lifts. I would assume that's where Boogs got the idea too. Note that he started doing them after me, by the way. Just point of fact. But yeah, I'm sure that has to be where Boogs got them from. Because I'd read about them actually, but it didn't make sense from the description that I'd read in the old text. It wasn't something that I would ever try based on what the description that I read, but seeing it done, it's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. So, started getting into some other channels that actually demonstrate how to actually do these old lifts, and I started loving them. They were all really cool, and I've had the best year of training that I've ever had since I started just varying it up and not just doing the big 3 lifts. One of the other questions that I was trying to roll in here was injury. Have you ever had any injuries? If so, how did you deal with them? I mentioned my earliest back injury. That was far from the only one. During that stagnation period that I've talked about, I had probably more little back pulls that I can count. And this is, most of them would be like, you can't walk the next day, like, that pop, and you don't want to bend over that day. The next day you can barely get out of bed. It's a constant pain. I injured them doing various things. Sometimes, heavy pulls or heavy back exercises, sometimes really weird stuff that you wouldn't think would even do it. I had one of the worst ones from a 75-pound thruster during my brief period of doing CrossFit. I did CrossFit for a while. I guess I should have mentioned that. I forgot about it. I did CrossFit for a couple of years, for I guess like a year and a half or something in there. Anyway, yeah. Got one of the worst back injuries I ever had doing 75-pound thrusters. I have no idea how that happened. But anyway, it got to the point where I pretty much just had a whole system. Like, it's just down to a T. Just, you pop your back, here's what you do. We'll have it fixed, we'll be back, Routine, right? So my routine doesn't have to be exactly this way for you, but I have used this in, slightly modified format on my wife and on various friends. It works pretty well. Basically, first couple days after you pop your back, as much rest as you can, just rest. Now, 3 to 5 days in, that's when I like to start getting into some active recovery, and for that, I like walking, but specifically walking up the steepest hill you can find. If you can go hiking up a steep hill, that's awesome. Walk up some stairs. Something where you're getting a little bit of a step-up motion in. You're not trying to lift weight, do weighted step-ups quite yet, but you're trying to walk, a good distance with some stepping up, going into the equation. That really loosens things up, really helps. I think it brings some, some glute activation in, which really helps. And that's going to tie into my next point. Probably about a week afterwards, I'm going to want to get back into the gym and do some actual rehab lifting. What my go-tos are hip thrusts. I always find that hip thrusts are helpful for back injuries, or almost always. Hip thrusts and ab work are usually what I start with. I usually find those bring a lot of improvement. Maybe the next day after I've done like hip thrusts and ab work, things are starting to feel just a little bit better. I'll start doing actual direct back exercises. I really like the glute ham raise machine. That really works well. And then I'll also start doing very light deadlifts. For me, that would be like 135 or something. Obviously, if your capabilities are lower, you might want to scale that down, but just very light deadlifts or very high reps. Like we're talking like 50 rep sets, you know, very high rep, low weight, just get a lot of blood flowing in there. And that'll be most of what I'll do for the first week. Second week back, I'll start trying to actually push things and like be a little bit more aggressive, but again with high reps. We're talking like, you know, 15, 20 reps, not probably going over too much over half my max, but high reps. And after that, I should be pretty ready to push it. And like I say, I got the recovering from back injuries thing just kind of down to a science, really. Haven't had to deal with it as much recently because I've been switching things up. I haven't just been beating myself into the wall trying to get my conventional deadlift or my back squat up and just injuring myself in the process, which is what I used to be doing. I guess that I mean, I've had a bunch of other little aches, pains here and there. You know, obviously everyone's knees hurt at some point. Just, you know, more hamstring work usually fixes it. For elbows, I mean, my elbows have hurt on various things. I just have to find a different pressing exercise that doesn't hurt them. Same thing with wrists and shoulders. I mean, shoulders, I've rarely had a time where some movement didn't hurt my shoulders, but I've never had a time where some movement didn't feel fine. So I've always just kind of rotated through things, and if one thing feels bad, something else will be just fine. But yeah, we kind of just rolled into the training mistakes, and that was the last thing that I wanted to cover in this segment. We're already running really long, and I've only got a couple questions. Yeah, so I mean, my training mistake was just putting too much emphasis on the big three, just making that my priority. I would just beat myself into the ground trying to get bench press and deadlift, especially. I cared a little bit less about squat, but I would just beat myself into the ground trying to get just a little bit more out of my deadlift. My PR is 600 pounds. I never actually got past that. I got really close to 605, which is only 5 pounds more. It doesn't mean anything. Lost it on grip. But I've never really been able to substantially go over that. And most of that was just, I couldn't step back and just say, okay, let's let deadlift sit. Like, that's not the be all end all. Let's just completely work on something else. I was always just, for a lot of that, I didn't know a whole lot of other exercises except that were comparable, except the one hand deadlift. But B, I just, I was just in the mentality that the big three are the most important. Deadlift is king. You have to, I'm somewhat good at deadlift, so that needs to be something that I'm even better at. And just week after week, month after month, I would just come in, give deadlifts my all. I'd make progress for a while, but then it'd get to where I was straining things, but then I wouldn't give up if I just try a little bit harder. Maybe I can push through it and get a bigger weight. I'd always end up straining something, overdoing something, having to back off for a while. We're starting over from scratch. We inch closer to 600 pounds again. Something happens. Now I'm back to 500. Now I have to, after a couple of weeks of missing trying whatever I'm trying, now I've lost momentum. Now I have to start back at 500 again, work my way back up. Something happened. We're back at 500, have to work. It's just, a never-ending cycle. Very, very similar on bench press, very similar. And I do regret that I didn't, realize earlier that there's nothing special about those lifts. There's nothing wrong with those lifts, but there's nothing special about them. And I really didn't need to be devoting so much energy to them specifically. I should have been looking for other stuff that I could have done. I should have been getting into gymnastics, kettlebells, doing more research on the old time lifts. And I was already ahead of the game. I mean, I already put more variety into my training than, most guys out there, but not nearly enough. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up the segment that was encompassing, my training history, my mistakes that I've made, and injuries. Let me get to the next question. For that, I'm going to have to go inside and get my laptop.